responsibility.
Finishing this fight.
Hello everyone, and welcome into the Lore Council. This is Cade, and I'm joined today with Keith.
Hello. Good morrow.
Good morrow indeed. And we are going over the entire first season of House of the Dragon, which is the prequel series to the gigantic smash ratings grab Game of Thrones, which has just concluded a week ago. So.
Yeah, and I thought it was really, really good. It's kind of, I don't know. I think it's better than Game of Thrones ever was in any of its seasons. I only got to like season 7 because Cersei went just like full like crazy Walter White mode, you know. So I stopped there, and I knew about the infamous season 8. And yeah, this seems like a great return to form. I would say it's basically like they put a novel into, visual form. It's like watching a book, and it's great.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And obviously at the beginning here, we're staying nice and spoiler-free. For some reason, if you haven't watched it, it's kind of been the kind of giant hit thing of this last fall. So, but yeah, I 100% agree. I love A Song of Ice and Fire. I loved the first 3 seasons of the Game of Thrones show. Season 4 was good, and then from there, they obviously didn't have any more book to adapt. So it very, 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 very quickly went downhill versus this. Anyone who's unfamiliar, this is based off of the book Fire and Blood, which was written by George R. R. Martin, and it is a in-universe history book written by a maester. So it definitely helps this show that it has a completed source material to go off of. And while there are changes, I think most of the time they're fairly harmless and don't do a ton to really hurt anything. So.
Now, I haven't read that source material, but I still enjoyed the show very much. And yeah, it's great. It's super high budget, which is that's very helpful for It's like Lord of the Rings quality, I would say. Maybe even better.
Yeah, I would
pretty much.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. The costumes and the set designs, all of that stuff are amazing. The effects look really good. There was just a lot of stuff that's just really fun to look at and makes you kind of pause your TV for a second almost and like, wow, that looks really cool. And I think there are lots of fun little details that they didn't really do for stuff like Game of Thrones that they do for this. There are lots of characters in this show who will have like their families like sigil somewhere on like their top, or they'll have it on like a pin somewhere. And I think that's something that was definitely missing a lot in Game of Thrones, to just kind of visually show off that these characters like take that pride in their family and everything.
Oh yeah, I probably missed some of the little subtle details, but definitely with the big stuff, the Targaryen dragon, all that family house stuff looks very cool on the show.
Yeah, it all looks really good. And what did you think about the casting?
Oh, for the casting, I thought everyone was really great. The guy who plays like the old king of Viserys, the whole show, he's really good. I don't think I've ever seen him in anything, but he's just he's fantastic.
Oh yeah, he's clawing and scraping for that Emmy, man. Paddy Constantine. He's a I haven't seen him in anything else either. The only thing I was a bit iffy on when I saw the announcements and everything, and even right before I started watching the show, was Matt Smith playing Daemon Targaryen, just because he looks a little bit goofy in a white wig.
Yeah, but it's like they just got Legolas's wig, put it on him.
Yeah, A tiny minor spoiler, but there's one episode where he has shorter hair, and I think he should have kept that wig. He looked a lot better than with like the straight Legolas wig.
It's one of those things. It looks better like on screen when you're watching it than it does in just like a screen cap or something.
Oh yeah, for sure. On screen, it looks a lot better than in like a lot of the like photos and stuff you see. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, and Matt Smith as Daemon is just like he just has a fantastic screen presence. He's great.
Yeah, he definitely does. When he is on screen, he does have that like kind of commanding presence, which is kind of funny because he was Doctor Who and the bad guy from Morbius is really the only two things I know him for. So.
Wow. Yeah, I did not see Morbius.
Yeah, I didn't either. I only saw the memes of it's Morbin time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think he did a really good job. I think he was the only character that I felt occasionally had like clunky dialogue, and that's just because well, obviously HBO is, I'm assuming, an American company, but when British people are in shows, I feel like Americans want them to say the C word all the time, because in America we obviously don't say that as much. And I feel like he overdid the quota of it, and he just said it a bit too much. And he always put this weird inflection on it, that whenever he...
I don't know.
I'm
sorry, I can't even think of one time when he said it in the whole show. So.
Oh, he says it in the first episode and the 10th episode for sure.
I just find it funny that that's...
Yeah, it's like a super minor thing. It's just he abuses the C word. And he had this weird inflection whenever he says it in the show. And I just didn't like it whenever he said it. When anyone else said it was fine. It's just he has this weird, and he's like, cunt! And he just says it really weird, and I did not like it.
Oh man, that's funny.
And yeah, and I feel like when characters say it too often, that's like the writers, it's them trying to be like a little too edgy of like, whoa, Americans don't say the C word very often. Wow. We're going to have this guy say it all the time.
I definitely did not pick up on that.
Yeah, that is one complaint that I've lobbied at several people when we're talking about the show. And I'm like, yeah, I just wish Daemon wouldn't say the C word all the time, because it's and he always says it during like really dramatic scenes, and it kind of just takes me out of it for a second. But yeah, that's just me. That's just me, old man shouting.
I didn't really find his dialogue clunky.
It was only when he said that. That was the only thing. Is just whenever he said the C word, it took me right out of it anytime he said it.
But I mean. Yeah, I mean, I pretty much enjoyed the entire show. I can't really like point to any one thing that bothered me about it. Like I was just able to like get into it and kind of just like just enjoy it for what it is. It's a great story. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. And for
like
me,
I like the way the way the story is told. It's for those of you who haven't watched it, it's each episode is like a different time period, and then it kind of jumps forward a bit.
Yeah, that was a criticism I saw levied by some people, is that the time jumps were jarring, but not really, I guess.
At first it was a little bit, but I like it. It makes each episode different and fresh, like, and the story's kind of moving forward. Really cool. I like it.
Yeah. It
definitely differentiates it from Game of Thrones. It kind of, keeps the story moving.
Yeah, and that it certainly does help to also just go along with the source material, because in the source material, obviously, it's very easy for like a history book, which is what the Fire and Blood book is, to convey time by just saying 10 years later, versus if you do that on screen, that's kind of boring. So it is, I think
for the show, which is awesome.
Yeah, which I really like, because then it's like, well, how do you know time has passed? Well, this character who was like, they'll have like a baby or something, and then 6 years later, or however long it might be in the time jumps, that child is now grown. So it's like, okay, duh, that's a really easy way to tell time.
Yeah.
Without having someone lazily be like, 10 years later.
No, yeah, or someone in the show says, oh, it's been 5 years since such and such incident. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and I mean those do happen, and obviously they're there
Much
to
better than just like the white letters and a black screen. 10 years later.
Yeah, 10 years later. Yeah, I think who is the actor who plays the older Rhaenyra? Emma D'Arcy, the actor who plays older Rhaenyra, they do a bang up job as well. And also the actress who played younger Rhaenyra, Millie Alcock, she also did a great job. So Rhaenyra overall, super good job.
Both Rhaenyras were better than the one Dany from Game of Thrones. In my opinion.
Yeah, I actually agree too. I think it also helps that
That they had better writing.
Yeah, that they had better writing. And their entire character isn't badass dragon queen who is always serious.
And who never actually gets control of the dragons, which is just really frustrating.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in this show. These guys, these Targaryens, they got all the dragons all the time, and it's awesome. If you're one of those people who always wanted dragons from Game of Thrones, this is the show.
Yeah, it's super fun seeing dragons on screen as well. I also like that each dragon that shows up visually looks different. If I don't remember where I saw this or read this, but essentially all three dragons in Game of Thrones are literally just copy paste of each other. None of them are different besides their color.
Sure.
And I think just the fact that in this show where they're gonna have, however many dragons on screen, like probably like a dozen-ish, I guess. The fact that they all look and sound different, I think it's really cool.
Oh, right, yeah. Rhaenyra's dragon, I think it's kind of smaller, I think, and it has like a higher pitched screech or roar or whatever.
Yeah, and we have that, and we have Vhagar, who's like a giant, huge, ancient dragon that's like 100 and some years old. Daemon's dragon, Caraxes, is my favorite, with like the really long neck and the kind of Pteranodon-looking wings. And he's red, and red dragons are cool.
And
needs more green dragons though.
Definitely have to rewatch this, and this is one of those shows like I knew at least after the first episode I was like, okay, this is gonna be really fun to rewatch later.
Yeah, and that's also a thing that we're looking forward to. It was really fun to be able to watch something like this for the first time and be able to go, okay, I can't wait to go back and watch this again.
Yeah, and just appreciate everything even more because now you'll know where things are going and leading up to.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that about does it for our spoiler-free portion. So if somehow you haven't watched this and haven't seen everything, go ahead and leave now. Go watch the show. It's really good. If you don't want to buy HBO, I'm sure there are ways to totally legally stream it. So get out there and watch it. It's really good stuff. So, hopping into spoilers.
Or if you just don't care.
Or, yeah, if you just don't care. So, hopping into the spoilers here. I really enjoyed the way that this started off with a flashback to Viserys' grandfather, King Jaehaerys, and the whole Great Council to decide who's going to be king, and that kind of just sets everything up, and it's a really good setup.
I don't remember that at all.
It's literally the first scene.
It doesn't ring a bell.
Oh, nice. But yeah, episode 1 has... This is immediately where I was like... it was with the Great Council scene right at the beginning, and then the tournament that they have later...
Tourney.
Yeah, the tourney and
awesome.
And the Great Council. Those are the two specific things that stuck out to me of like, oh, like this is gonna look really good. Because in Game of Thrones in the first season they have a tournament and it looks really cheap. It looks really small scale. But like the tournament that they have here in this first episode, it's like it looks big. Everybody has like cool looking armor.
It all looks authentic, so of course that just brings your immersion level like super high up, so you can get super into the story.
Yeah, and then it does a really good job of introducing all the characters.
And just having the tournament is great because it just feels very classic, Game of Thrones environment. There's always some kind of a tournament or a dinner or a feast going on or someone's wedding,
Yeah, and it felt really good, and obviously it helps to introduce all the characters because we have all the characters are going to be at this place. So we have Daemon. He's shown to be and it's very fun that with this tournament they're able to show not tell. So they're able to show that Daemon is kind of this cocky younger brother to the prince who's a bit more cool-headed, and then we have Kristen Cole who's introduced, and he ends up winning the tournament. And then interspersed with this, we have a super chilling scene that's, I'm pretty sure, meant to make you feel uncomfortable as King Viserys' wife is giving birth and is having complications, and they're like, okay, yeah, let's just give her a C-section. And it's medieval times, so we don't have any anesthetic, and she's going to die. So,
yep, that was just super, super hardcore, messed up stuff.
Yeah, and so we have that.
Definitely, and then, super graphic too. Like they show the freaking the maester or whoever reaching in there, and wow, really, yeah. They must have made a freaking model or something Oh man.
Yeah, really good effects there, and that's interspersed with scenes of a different sort where they are having the tourney and people are getting their heads bashed in and getting knocked off their horses, and all in all it's really good. And then
it's almost funny at first because it's just the knights get pissed at each other and then they start killing each other.
Yeah, and it works really well to kind of show that
very graphic, but yeah,
it also works really well to show the differences in this medieval society of men and women, where it's men are out there, they're fighting, and then women have their own kind of trials and tribulations that they have to go through, and those two things, they don't ever go over each other. And it works really good to show that. And then that point will kind of get reinforced more and more throughout the show as it goes on. Oh yeah. And yeah, it works really well to show that. And then even though he sacrifices his wife to save the baby, Viserys' newborn son, the male heir that he's been searching for years, also dies. And then we then have a scene where Daemon is in a tavern with his boys on the city watch, and he makes a joke about King Viserys' son being heir for a day. And then that's reported to King Viserys, and he kicks Daemon out of King's Landing. And this is...
what about that whole awesome scene with where Daemon just kicks ass with the Night's Watch?
City Watch.
Oh, the City Watch, that was the first episode, right?
Yeah, that's also in there, yeah.
Yeah, that scene was freaking great, but horrible at the same time.
Oh, yeah. But yeah.
He's just clearing out the riffraff and just handing out total Hammurabi kind of punishments, rapist, cut his shit off, and oh man, dude, yeah, and it's
yeah, but yeah, the scene where
that's not what gets me kicked out.
Yeah, no kidding. But yeah, the scene where Viserys does exile Daemon was probably that was my favorite scene until a scene we'll talk about later, and then. Daemon is exiled, and then Viserys appoints his only living daughter, Rhaenyra, as heir to the Iron Throne, and has all these lords come to swear to her that they'll honor that. And then this is one thing that did stick in my and many other people's craw a little bit about the first season is that it's this goofy tie-in to Game of Thrones where Viserys reveals Aegon the Conqueror's dream that inspired him to unify Westeros, because the king has always passed to the heir that there's a darkness in the north that the Targaryens have to be united to face, and it's really goofy, and it's something that, as far as we know, isn't in the books. or anything
I don't think
like
it's
that.
goofy. I just think it's kind of ironic because when we get to Game of Thrones, what happens is, the whole Targaryen throne gets, usurped, and nobody knows this stupid prophecy or whatever. So
Yeah, and there's
the whole thing
also
starts. So the whole place is just slowly going to shit from there.
yeah, and there's other lore implications that gets into, but we won't get into that here. Episode 2 is a bit of a slower episode that helps to kind of start up the big kind of conflict, I guess, that is kind of the first little chunk of this, and that's in the Stepstones.
Is it still the first episode?
No, we're on to the second episode now.
Oh, well, I was just going to say...
oh, yeah, go for it.
As far as first episodes go, I think, well, if we're just, like, comparing apples to oranges here, I think the this first episode was a lot better than the first episode of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I could definitely see
Like,
that.
way better. Just, like, wow, like, what a way to start a show. Like, for something like this, you could just show somebody the first episode, and most people, I think, would immediately think, "Oh yeah, this is gonna be really good." Like, yeah, faux show.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a really good way of introducing the characters and setting up the big old conflict that's going to happen later on. But scooting on to episode 2, this takes place 6 months after the first episodes, and Daemon is on Dragonstone, even though he was kicked out of King's Landing, and he's not supposed to be on Dragonstone. And
The Targaryen, it's where dragons are.
but yeah, this essentially really what this kind of episode revolves around is the small council deciding how to get Daemon out of Dragonstone, because he also stole a dragon egg, and he's living there with his mistress, and he's like, hey, I'm gonna knock up my mistress instead of my lawful wedded wife. And that, oh, well, I'm Daemon, and I should still
from
be
the
the heir.
Fingers or something.
She's from the Free Cities. She has a goofy accent, and I hate when she speaks. But yeah, and then...
Isn't that like a Free City accent, or
Yeah, not from
a
the
Valyrian
Fingers.
accent or something?
No, it's French, and I hate it. I don't remember where it is. We also get Sir Criston Cole being named to the Kingsguard by Rhaenyra. And we have Sir Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, who is basically second in command of the whole kingdom, second only to the king, is like, hey, Alicent, you're a teenager. Why don't you go console the king because his wife just died? Because he's going to have to remarry. And Corlys Velaryon and his wife Rhaenys Targaryen, who is a cousin to King Viserys, they're like, oh, hey, Viserys, why don't you marry our daughter? She's 12. So yeah, that's kind of the conflict of this episode, is who is Viserys going to marry, as well as Daemon with the egg. And that one is resolved. We get a really good scene of Otto Hightower and a bunch of knights going to Dragonstone to try and get the egg back. And yeah, basically Rhaenyra shows up on her dragon and is like, hey, just give the egg back. I'm the heir. Quit being a dingus.
Yeah, I just really like the story of the show. Like, it just seems like it. I don't know. It's just like a Game of Thrones, like, best hits. Like, all the most interesting parts of what happens in Game of Thrones kind of happens here. It's always about the royals and having to do their duty for their line, and it's all about power and who's coming next, and the king's just kind of there. He has to do it, and he doesn't really have a choice. And you'll see the way that goes along in the show.
Yeah.
Like, just seeing that whole lifetime happen is kind of interesting to see. Like,
yeah, I definitely agree. And at the end of this
Yeah,
episode, Viserys basically just goes in the small council, and he's like, oh, hey, by the way, I'm not going to marry the 12-year-old. I'm going to marry Otto Hightower's daughter, which kind of ends up pissing off Rhaenyra, obviously, because Alicent and her are like childhood BFFs, and Corlys obviously wanted his daughter to marry the king. So
Yep.
And then
But at least he's happy.
and at the end of the episode, Corlys Velaryon meets with Daemon and is like, "Hey, help me win this war in the Stepstones, please." And yeah, that is what the
Is that the sea snake guy?
the sea snake, Corlys Velaryon.
Okay.
Yeah, drippiest guy in the whole show.
Yep, and then we have this guy who's like mostly an off-screen protagonist, which I kind of like. Like he's only
Antagonist?
mentioned by name at first, or antagonist, excuse
Yeah.
me.
Crab feeder.
The crab guy.
Crab dude. Zoidberg?
Crab maybe.
Crab, maybe? Yeah, so it turns out Professor Zoidberg is a pirate in this. No, he's
Is it me maybe?
He's a why not Zoidberg? No, he's an ugly dude in a mask who kills people and feeds them to crabs. And he's basically a
Yeah.
pirate king of the Stepstones.
A way of being cool and spooky.
And he has literally no lines of dialogue.
No other characteristics, but he kills
he's-
people and feeds them to crabs. That's cool.
But he's a bad guy.
No need.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think about it? Just like writing wise, is like him being there. Like, is he just there to just be a conflict or an enemy? Or
I mean, he's in the novels, and in the novels, he gets basically the same amount of screen time and interest that the show shows him. He's essentially there for there to be a conflict to take place that gets Daemon away from King's Landing and lets him kind of do his own thing. And
so
be a
it's really
badass.
more of a political issue, even though it's like war and fighting.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
And then, speaking of, episode 3 opens up with the conflict in the Stepstones, which is really fun. They just can't beat the crab feeder and his triarchy forces because whenever they show up, they kind of just go and hide in caves and then come back out and sneak up on them. This also, episode 3, is one of my favorite episodes as well. King Viserys plans a giant royal hunt to celebrate his son Aegon's second birthday. And we get to see now that in the past 3 years, not only has Rhaenyra's father wed and bedded her childhood best friend, but also knocked her up, and now he has a son, which he obviously wanted. And that's kind of the big driving force of this episode. Lords keep coming up to King Viserys, and they're like, "Hey, here's this dude who should marry your daughter. Marry my son to your daughter. Marry me to your daughter. Let me, blah blah blah." And
wasn't the first like suitor a Lannister?
Yep, he's
Of
a
Casterly
Lannister.
Rock.
Yeah. Yeah. So he is there. Lord Jason, which Rhaenyra says no, and then.
So it seems all it takes to get close to, or to get like kingly-ish powers, is to just become hand of the king, and then boom, you're in there, baby.
Yeah, and then we have Otto gives forth, in hindsight, the suggestion that would have saved everyone's life if Viserys.
Who's Otto?
Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King.
Oh, right, sure.
Yeah, he proposes, because obviously it's a thing in the books and in the shows that the Targaryens do incest, and they marry brother to sister, uncle to niece, etc. And so he proposes that Aegon is betrothed to his half-sister, and there's a really good line, I wish I remembered it exactly, but Viserys says that he's just sick of all the politicking, and it works really, really well. Yeah, and I really liked that. And yeah, so from here they do that, and yeah, eventually Viserys agrees to send aid to his brother in the Stepstones, and
and then when Daemon does get like the word that he's getting reinforcements from Viserys, he just completely loses his shit and decides to beat the crab feeder no matter what.
Yeah, and they do it. It works really well. He pretends to surrender, so that way all of Crab Feeder's forces come out of the woodwork and out of hiding, and Laenor Velaryon who is Corlys' son.
Didn't Daemon like beat a dude to death?
Oh yeah,
Or
he
something
beat
like
the
that?
messenger up.
Who?
The messenger from King Viserys.
Oh yeah. Right,
yeah, he beats him up and then goes out, pretends to surrender to the crab feeder, and yeah, kicks ass. And then
Dragon time.
Yeah, dragon time, and it works really well. And eventually he bisects the crab feeder, and he's Dunsky.
Yeah, dude, so graphic. He just comes out hauling half of this dude's freaking torso and arm, plus his head.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then, yeah, episode 2 I really like. We get a lot of political intrigue. We also get pretty much the high point, I would say, of action. For the
Or isn't that
season?
episode 3?
Yeah.
Or did I skip ahead to like 2 episodes? Or
No,
something?
that's in episode 3. Yeah. It ends with Daemon off-screen bisects crab feeder.
So then we're on episode 4.
Yeah, episode 4, really politicky kind of episode. We have, it starts off, Rhaenyra's on this big tour to choose a husband for her. And yeah, from here, Daemon also returns to King's Landing, and he has been named King of the Narrow Sea. And he has a really cool looking crown. Looks like it's made out of ivory or something. I have no clue. It just looked really cool. And he
Yeah,
has
I must have completely missed him just being declared king of the whole narrow
they
sea.
do it off screen. They just say that he did it.
Huh. Yeah.
But yeah, this is a really interesting episode. Viserys and his brother reunite, and they're besties again. We have Alicent ends up speaking with Rhaenyra, and she's like, "Hey, I want to be friends again." And then after dark, Daemon and Rhaenyra sneak out of the keep to go around King's Landing, and they have some drinks, go to an orgy, and they visit a brothel, and Daemon is about to bang his niece.
Do a little mackin'.
A little mackin' on his, 18, 19-year-old niece.
I have no idea.
Yeah. But yeah, he can't get it up for whatever reason, so he leaves her there.
Is that what happened?
Essentially, yeah, that's what they said in the behind the scenes thing. So,
Oh, I thought maybe he just did all of that just to piss off Viserys.
oh no, he
He did it in a public place and everything.
Yeah,
and
I think-
and then he just kind of leaves halfway through.
Yeah,
just
what
so they would
the,
be seen together.
Yeah, what the director of this episode basically said is that Daemon has a weird thing of being in control, and once he realizes that he's not in control, I guess, then he's like, "Oh, I'm not into this." I don't know.
That's weird.
Yeah, so basically Daemon
I thought he was just going full Machiavelli.
No, Daemon apparently just couldn't get it up, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not into this if you're into it that much." So then Rhaenyra sneaks back to her room and seduces Kristen Cole, and they have a
Her loyal,
Kingsguard
white
knight,
cloak
yeah.
guard. Yeah, and this was kind of interesting, and I liked the attention to detail here, because when they start getting to the taking off the clothes part, he's taking off his royal white cloak that says that he's a
a Kingsguard,
white cloak and Kingsguard, yeah. And yeah, it's done with a lot of reverence and stuff, but then they do it anyway. But
Yeah.
I like that little bit of detail there.
Yeah. And essentially from here we have a spy tells Otto, well, the spy is a spy for Daemon's former mistress, and she tells Otto about this, and then Otto tells the king, and Alicent overhears it and is like, "Rhaenyra, did you bone your uncle?" And she's like, "No." Because they didn't, which is them telling the truth. And then from there,
When does her Kingsguard guy give up the ghost anyway? Is that this episode or
next episode. Next episode.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so we have that happen, and then we get another really good confrontation between Viserys and Daemon, he's hungover, he's disheveled, he probably hasn't showered, didn't brush his teeth. I mean, we've all been there. You have a night out, you forget to brush your teeth, you don't shower, you kind of just look and feel like crap.
In Game of Thrones time.
I I guess it's a historical thing that they didn't have like toothbrushes, but there was this this type of wood that if you kind of chew on it, and then you can kind of brush your teeth with that. So,
Okay.
that's a thing. It obviously it wasn't
You're just rubbing your teeth raw with a piece of wood.
well. It's like you use live wood, so it's still kind of like stringy.
Okay.
I don't know, man. I didn't live in the year 1200. That's
Just
just
brush your teeth with wood. What?
well, it's
what
like
a,
you chew on
what
it.
a concept.
Well, have you ever chopped up like a piece of like live wood and it's still kind of stringy?
Sure.
Yeah, that's how they.
I don't think so. I can't recall a specific time when I've done that, but I feel like that has happened.
I'll find the video and I'll send it to you. It's my dumb little fun fact that I have in my back pocket.
Nice.
Yeah, so Damon, he looks like crap. He's hungover. We've all been there. And yeah, he gets exiled again, which was a fun little meme for about a week. Damon just shows up to King's Landing, gets exiled, shows up again, gets exiled.
And yeah, he's the bad boy of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, he's the bad boy. But yeah, in order to strengthen the throne, Viserys is like, okay, Rhaenyra, we've had enough of this. You're gonna marry Laenor Velaryon. And Rhaenyra's like, yeah, okay, but Otto can't be your hand anymore because he's obviously manipulating you for his family's own game. And they basically do that. They both agree to that. And then at the very end of the episode is Grand Maester Mellos gives Rhaenyra a abortion tea. So.
Oh right, yeah. Moon tea.
Moon tea, yeah.
Which nice little reference to Game of Thrones.
Yeah, moon tea.
They do that.
They do that. Yeah.
They do drink moon tea.
Moon tea. But yeah, it's left open to interpretation whether or not Rhaenyra takes it. But obviously she does because she doesn't have a baby with Kristen. Or does he?
And then jokes on her. Her husband's gay. Or is that this episode?
That is the next episode. So he
is now a... What do they call it? She a hag?
What?
I don't know.
No, I don't know either.
There's some old-timey term for it.
But yeah. So episode 5 here opens up and Daemon murders his wife, Lady Rhea Royce, and...
Who? What? Oh, he murders her?
Yeah.
This is one of those things. It's like in the books too. Something happens off screen and then it's like you don't really know what happens because you just have somebody's word to go off of it. So the story is that his wife fell off a horse and broke her neck, but she was a really great horse rider. ...
Yeah, and essentially that's one of the things. This is one of the scenes that I didn't care to have in here too much. Is that we just see Daemon very explicitly like get his wife to fall off a horse and then like kill her essentially. And
did they show that happening? Because I must have missed that.
They don't show him kill her, but the implication is 100% that he kills her.
Oh, but they show her falling off the horse.
Yeah, they show her falling off the horse, and it's Daemon's fault.
I do not remember that.
But yeah, we also having so the big thing of this episode is the wedding between Rhaenyra and Sir Laenor. They're betrothed at the beginning of this episode. The terms are all they come to terms with it, and Rhaenyra is essentially like, "Hey, Laenor, I totally understand that you're gay, but we have to fulfill our like feudal duties and have a kid, but then we can just go sleep with whoever we want." And they're both like, "Okay, sick." And then from here we get that. On the ship back to King's Landing, Sir Criston goes into full simp mode, and he's like, "Princess, run away with me to Essos, and we'll just pretend to be new people, and we can just do whatever you want." And Rhaenyra's like...
And of course, he's like, I'm like one of the most powerful people in the land.
Literally like, "I'm literally going to be queen of Westeros. I'm not going to go live with you in some shit house. I literally have
maybe my whole life and then maybe end up a slave in the free city."
It's like, anyway. Like, I also have this dragon. Like, how are we going to feed a dragon, bro? And... Kristen's basically like, "Hey, I'm not going to be your like side piece."
So he's like, okay, so instead of me being your side piece, just probably forever,
I'm going to hate you
leave everything
forever.
behind.
And then,
Wait, what did you say?
Oh, Rhaenyra says no, and he's like, well, now I hate you.
Oh, yeah.
Because later
Sorry,
on, we
Mom.
have Alicent questions Kristen about Rhaenyra and Daemon sleeping together, and the way she's like... All right, and we are back. We just had a slight technical difficulty there, as we had to do in the past. So, the last thing we were talking about was essentially Sir Kristen admitting to Queen Alicent that he was the one who did the hanky-panky no pants dance with Princess Rhaenyra.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed.
He did the nasty and the pasty.
Nasty and the pasty. Fortunately, he's not his own grandfather. Or is
Well, not
he?
we.
Whoa!
Somebody is someone's grandpa around there.
True. All right. So, essentially after this, Alicent obviously is not very happy, and during the celebration of Rhaenyra and Laenor's, like, their pre-wedding party, which is a thing in Westeros.
Waiting for some horrible shit to happen, and
Yeah, as you do.
I was not disappointed.
Yeah, Daemon shows up, of course, because he's just got to show up, uninvited to a wedding. Gotta love that. And he's confronted by his wife's cousin, who he murdered, and says, no, bro, I didn't murder her. Don't be silly. And essentially, everything is going just fine.
You crazy.
Everything's going fine. Queen Alicent shows up late in a green gown, and Laenor
right in the middle of the king's speech.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Total rude move.
Very, very, very fun.
And then
much atmosphere.
Yeah, Sir Joffrey, who is Laenor's lover, goes to talk to Sir Kristen, and he's like, "Hey, bro, I'm totally sure you're banging Rhaenyra, right? Because I'm banging Laenor."
He was really feeling his oats, and he just decided to like rub this dude's nose in it just because he's like, yeah, we have a secret, and I know your secret too, so herder.
And what happens? And then Kristen Cole thinks that Joffrey is blackmailing him, and he beats him to death, and that kind of obviously turns everyone off of the whole wedding party, and Laenor.
Very sad.
Yeah, Rhaenyra and Laenor just have like a boring private ceremony. Sir Kristen is about to seppuku himself, and then Alicent shows up, and she's like, "No, join the dark side." And he's like, "Oh, okay, I won't kill myself now."
Oh, and then he like swears to be her.
Yeah, he's gonna be her like sworn
guard.
Yeah. So yeah, that is episode 5, another super, super good episode. And then we jump over to a 10-year time jump. And we literally open up this episode 6 opens up with a birthing scene. Fortunately, unlike the last birthing scene we saw, this one goes off without a hitch, and Rhaenyra gives birth to a healthy little baby boy.
Sure.
And then we have a scene where Laenor shows up, and Rhaenyra is requested to meet with Queen Alicent, and she walks through just having given birth, all very shaky and whatnot, because she obviously had just given birth. And yeah, they introduce their newest son, who Laenor decides on the spot to name Joffrey after his murdered lover. And
yeah, so apparently Joffrey isn't the first of his name.
Well, first of his name means like he's
the first. Oh,
he's the first
king. I meant he was literally the first person who ever had that name.
No, that just means like he's like the first person who was king to be named Joffrey.
Oh.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Yeah.
So then that means that this Joffrey doesn't become king ever? If that's a thing?
No. Yeah, anyways. Yeah, they introduce them, and it's very obvious that the three sons by that Rhaenyra has had are not Laenor's, considering they all have brown hair, which is an interesting change from the books. In the books, they do have the brown hair, but there's also a bit more ambiguity that the show doesn't have, because Laenor's grandmother, Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, in the books, she had black hair because one of her parents was a Baratheon, so it's implied that the dark hair could come from their grandmother, Rhaenys, versus because again, in the books, everything is a bit more alluded to. No one's actually 100% sure of some of the stuff that happens, because a lot of it comes from secondhand information. But in the show continuity, it is confirmed that Rhaenyra's 3 sons are not Laenor's, and that they are Sir Harwin Strong's, who shows up in this episode, and he's very fatherly towards
The what now?
his 3 children. What's that?
What? So wait, Rhaenyra's kids, they aren't the sons of the Valerian guy?
No.
Really?
Yeah, they literally say it.
Whose
like
kids are
several
they
times.
again?
Sir Harwin Strong. He's the captain of the city watching this episode.
I don't remember who that is.
Yeah, he's literally in this episode, and in the last in episode 5 and one of the previous episodes. He's a fairly supporting character. Anyways, yeah. So
wow.
they do that, and yeah, we also run into Prince Aegon, who now is 10 years older, and we have him having a wank out a window.
Oh yes, that I remember.
Yeah,
really
interesting,
building up the
very
character.
weird.
Specifically, while a clock tower was ringing outside, I think he was doing that to the clock ringing. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, and Alicent tells her naked son, who was just caught choking the chicken on a window, that one day you're gonna have to fight your half sister for the throne.
Yeah, she gets real Game of Thrones on his ass and is like, we're in danger and our very lives are at stake. And, when you play the Game of Thrones, you either win or you die.
Or, option C, you jerk off out a window.
Yeah, or you can take the, that path.
Yeah. We also
it's always an option.
Meet up with Daemon and his wife. He has married Laena Velaryon, who is Laenor's sister. They are in Pentos, one of the free cities, with their daughters Baela and Rhaena, and they have a little bit of a back and forth with the ruler of Pentos, who wants help against the Triarchy, who have resurged in the Steppe Zones, and Daemon essentially says no, and then his wife is unable to give birth due to labor complications, and she
commits dragon seppuku.
Yeah, she commands Vhagar, her dragon, to kill her. Then we have
she's very sad.
Yeah, very sad because essentially it's going to be the same thing where we have a doctor type person. They technically aren't maesters, but they serve essentially the same purpose. Talking with Daemon about how, well, we can either cut your wife open or both her and the baby are going to die. And Laena's like, nope, you don't get to do that. I'm going to off myself and this fetus. We also have...
I did like that dilemma kind of returning, though, that same dilemma that Viserys had originally.
Yeah. And maybe these people wouldn't be having all these birthing complications if they weren't, like, a family of inbreds.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah. Maybe marry outside of, like, your small little family square, and you'll get some better genes in there, bro. No.
Ah, man, you gotta power move. You gotta
keep the blood pure.
Make houses and stuff. Yeah, bro.
Yeah, bro. But anyways, that happens. Kristen, who is now serving Alicent, is in the training yard with Alicent's kids and Rhaenyra's kids. Obviously, Sansa's the baby. And Harwin is also there, and Kristen's being a dickhead to the Rhaenyra's kids, Jacaerys and Lysares, and Harwin's like, hey bro, stop being a dick to these kids, and Kristen's like, haha, well, usually people are only that, like, devoted to, like, a brother or a cousin or a son, thus implying that they're Sir Harwin's kids. Sir Harwin beats up Sir Criston and gets kicked out of King's Landing. Sir Lionel Strong, his father, who's the new Hand of the King, is like, hey bro, I want to quit, my son's kind of making a shit show, and Viserys says no, but you can return your kid back to your castle. They do that. Larys, who is Sir Lionel's other son, is like, hey, the queen, I'm a bad guy, and I will kill my brother and father in a fire and make it look like an accident. And that happens, and then at the end of the episode, Rhaenyra decides to move her household to Dragonstone, along with Laenor's new boy toy, Sir Carl.
I don't remember any of that.
Yeah, overall, episode 6 basically serves to set up the big time skip. So we have that, and then we go on into episode 7, which revolves around Laena Velarion's funeral. We have that.
That I remember, yeah.
Yeah. So we have that, and we have Viserys. We have that big thing start right at the beginning. And essentially, the biggest parts of this episode, just to go over to it with, is now that Laena is dead, Prince Aemond, who is Viserys' second-born son, wants to claim a dragon, and he wants to claim Vhagar, and he claims Vhagar, who is the biggest dragon, and gets into a altercation with his some of his cousins and his nephews, and Lucerys Velaryon, one of Rhaenyra's children, slashes out Aemond's eye. Yeah. And which is obviously, oof, ouch, his fucking eye. He's like, he's like, what, like 10 years old or something?
Yep.
And
then there's this whole big thing.
Yeah.
It causes this whole big thing with the royals, you know, because the queen. Sorry, I don't remember anyone's names. But the queen just gets really mad because Aemond is her son, and she wants to take out the eye of Rhaenyra's son as payment.
Yeah.
And she like pulls out a knife and she's gonna like actually stab her. Pretty crazy stuff. Yeah, took it a little too far there.
Yeah, it all happens. It's a really good tense scene. And then earlier in the episode, we also have Daemon and Rhaenyra hooking up. So a little niece and uncle incest action there. And then at the end of the episode,
oh yeah,
they essentially decide with Laenor, hey, how about we fake your death, and then you and your boyfriend can go live over in Essos, and I will marry my uncle. And and they do that. Laenor runs away with his lover, and Rhaenyra and Daemon have a pretty cool, visually looking Valyrian like Dragon Lord wedding, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and then yeah, that's the end of the episode. Is Laenor rowing off in a boat to go on a bigger boat to go across the sea and go? I don't know. I don't know what he does over there.
And yeah, incest wedding.
Incest wedding. And so these last 3 episodes is really where stuff starts to heat up, because in episode 8 here, this is 6 years have passed again, so we have another time skip. This is the last time skip of the season. And Lord Corlys, the Sea Snake, has been severely wounded fighting in the Stepstones, and his brother, Vaemond, is basically like, hey, I'm going to try and be named heir for my brother because Rhaenyra's kids are illegitimate. And the episode revolves around that conflict. Daemon and Rhaenyra and their children, and Rhaenyra's children from her marriage with Laenor, all show up, and Daemon and Rhaenyra find King Viserys. He's like he's bedridden. He looks disgusting. He
looks like a living corpse. Like, it's really bad.
Yeah, pretty much. The CGI and makeup work is like super, super good. It's really good. Like, the whole right side of his face is all covered up.
Right, his like right eyes, and then later you see his right eye is just like a hole.
Yeah, it's
just
a
socket.
Like, yeah, there's like his like face is like he's just like skin and bones. Yeah, it looked really, really good. It's really effective. Gross. And they introduce Daemon and Rhaenyra's 2 children to Viserys. They have another Aegon and another Viserys, so obviously named after Rhaenyra's father. And then we have that. Alicent.
Yeah, but he's still feeling pretty bad, and they got him all whacked out on milk of the poppy all the time and stuff.
Which is essentially like
he's,
medieval oxys.
He's just sliding into oblivion. It's really, I'm not sure what to call. Just, I don't know, getting to see him like start out as king, and then you see his whole freaking life basically, and then he's just on his last feet, and they're just barely keeping him alive.
And that is something that we've kind of haven't really touched on, but in each episode after, like, I think season 2 is really the last one where
episode 2?
Or episode 2, yeah, it's really the last one where Viserys looks like a normal dude, and every episode after that he just gets worse. So like in episode 3 it's a little bit more subtle. He's just missing a couple of fingers on his one hand, but he always wears gloves. And then in episode 4, he's looking a little crunchy. He's missing a bit of his hair.
Oh, and of course, they're all just constantly doing leech treatments for him.
Oh yeah, they're leeching him, putting maggots on his arm to try and eat the rotten flesh.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh, this is the medical attention the king gets. Feel bad for everybody else.
Yeah, it's not great. But yeah, the big dramatic turning point of this episode. The night before Sir Vaemon's petition to become heir of Driftmark, Rhaenyra goes into Viserys' bedroom and like pleads with her father. It's very emotional. Emma D'Arcy, they do a very, very good job, and they're like pleading with their father, and Rhaenyra's pleading with her father and everything, and she's like, please, if you love me, if you support me, if you really want me to be the heir, you have to show up and you have to speak for us, because that if my son is seen to be illegitimate, then essentially that poo-poos you making me heir. And then from there, we go into it. Vaemond presents his petition, and then we have the most badass
I have the blood. I have the purest blood.
Yeah, and then we have
that's his whole argument, basically.
Yeah, his whole argument is, I'm not a bastard. This kid who is heir to Driftmark is a bastard. And then we have the most badass scene. My boy, the GOAT, Viserys, comes in. His Kingsguard is like, his Kingsguard announces that he's there, and he tells Otto Hightower, the Hand, that he'll sit the throne. It's this super emotional scene. He comes, he's like walking in, he's like hunched over, he's got like a Phantom of the Opera mask covering up his disfigured half of his face.
Yeah, it's like made out of gold.
Yeah, it's made out of gold. He's got his crown on, he's all dripped out to the nines, like this dude.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's awesome. The music is great. The acting is great. It's super dramatic. He apparently this wasn't planned when they were shooting, but he trips and his crown falls off. And Daemon picks it up and puts it back on his brother's head. And I guess they didn't plan that. It kind of just happened. Huh. And then the two actors, Paddy Constantine and Matt Smith, just rolled with it.
Cool.
And so then we have Daemon and Viserys. They kind of reunite and they're boys again. And yeah.
That was a really cool moment, too.
Yeah, that was
Daemon helping
really
out
cool
his brother.
Scene. Yeah. Yeah, I told my I told my brother the next day, I'm like, if I was ever disfigured by some kind of infection, I know you would help me climb up a throne. So, hopefully, ideally, I don't want to end up with a disgusting like leprosy disease, but if it does, but yeah.
I think the coolest part though is like once he gets up on the throne, he gets his wits about him, and he's able to like make sense and deliberate.
Oh yeah, well, and I just like the line that he has. He's like, why are we talking about matters that have already been like discussed? Like Lucerys Velaryon is he's my trueborn grandson, and he's been named heir to Driftmark. So what are we even arguing about? And then Vaemond, he's like, that is no true Velaryon. He is a bastard! And then he calls Rhaenyra a whore. King Viserys has this great thing. He stands up, he draws out his dagger, and he's like, I'll have your tongue for that. And then Daemon just slices off like the top half of his head, and he's like, he can keep his tongue.
Yeah, slices off to where you can only see his fucking tongue and the bottom of his jaw and everything. Yeah. And he can keep his tongue.
Yeah. Really, really
awesome.
Good. Yeah, really good scene. And then, then after that, we have a fun little family feast of everybody, and they all seem like they're reconciling. Viserys has the moment where he reveals his disfigurement that we kind of talked about earlier.
Oh, sure, yeah. He takes off the mask, and yeah.
Yeah, the makeup and CGI work was really good. I couldn't tell until I watched the behind the scenes where like the makeup ended and the CGI began. But it was really, really good. All of that really good. Paddy Constantine, he's acting his butt off. Everyone's doing a great job here. And then
it's very sentimental.
Yeah, it's very sentimental. They're all making nice toast to each other. And then Viserys is finally, he's like, okay, everyone's happy. I'm going to bed.
And then the music players pull out crossbows and shoot everyone.
Oh, no!
That's the other thing.
Oh, wait, no, that's probably the last good episode of Game of Thrones. No, but instead, Aemon, since he's a bitter dickhead, insults Rhaenyra's kids, and he's like insinuating that they're the sons of Harwin Strong, which obviously we all, as the watchers, know,
I see.
Everybody knows. That's why he calls
now.
them
Wow.
to my nephews.
I must have missed like half of what was going on in this show.
I think he says
he's calling them strong.
Yeah, he's like they're.
But he means
okay. Yeah, because his toast is like to my nephews.
I was wondering why they got so
wise, something and strong, and then that kind of like brings everything down, and everyone's all poo-pooing, and then
they're all poo-pooing on the floor.
Yeah, they're all poo-pooing. It's a bad time. Everyone leaves, and then Alicent goes upstairs and to, I don't know, essentially say goodnight to her zombie husband. And King Viserys thinks that it's Rhaenyra, and so he's talking about Aegon the Conqueror's dream, and he's like, oh, Aegon, and he says Aegon a bunch of times, and then Alicent is like, oh, okay, that's my son, Aegon, that's his name. And then Viserys, he like dies, he's like reaching towards the sky, and then the last thing he says before everything goes to black, he's like, my love, and then he dies. So, R.I.P. R.I.P. the GOAT. This is probably the strongest episode in this season, and honestly, probably also the probably the best episode of any like Game of Thrones branded TV. It's super good. The acting is great. Drama, great. Everything, just great.
Oh, yeah.
Then we have episode 9. This one is pretty easy and simple to go over because it's basically a search for Aegon because Alicent and the small council want to crown him.
You mean Aegon?
Aegon, same thing.
You say Aegon.
Aegon. So, but yeah, they're looking for him. Kristen Cole kills a dude for saying that you're usurping Rhaenyra, essentially. The king said this. Why would we trust you? You were the only person there, like, right before he died. How do we know this is legit? And then after Kristen kills him, Otto Hightower's like, oh, okay, Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, Harold Westerling, go kill Rhaenyra. And then Sir Harold quits like a boss. Tears off his white cloak, and he's like, y'all suck. I recognize no authority but the king.
Yeah, I like the line he says. He's like, there's no point in having a Kingsguard if there's no king.
Yeah.
And he just walks out, and I was like, damn, they needed this guy around 200 years later.
Yeah, no kidding. But yeah, and essentially this whole thing is it's a race between Alicent and
I also
Otto.
just want to say I like how much like how similar things are to the times in Game of Thrones. Like it's almost like with the way things work with the kingdom, it's like, just kind of just changes hands, changes, under new management.
Yeah.
It's very similar to,
It's
you
like,
always got the council and there's drama and stuff,
it's like poetry. It rhymes.
It's like, yeah. Yes. Very apt. Very apt. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it works really well, and essentially it's a race between Otto and Alicent. Both of them want to get to Rhaenyra first, or not to Rhaenyra, excuse me, to Aegon. So they can...
Oh, yeah, so they can tell their bullshit version of the story.
Yeah. And essentially it ends up where Alicent ends up finding Aegon first, and they're like, hey, bro. And she's like, hey, son, I know you suck. Nobody likes you. You're a rapist. You masturbate out windows. You're trash. But your dad told me right before he died that he wants you to be king.
And you actually don't suck at all. You are the king.
Yeah, you're the king, bro. Even though you're awful and you look like you're 5 years old, but you're gonna be the king. So they do that. We also have a super awkward scene of Larys.
Super awkward Sith in the building.
Super awkward Sith. Super awkward scene of Larys having a choking the chicken to Queen Alicent's feet. That has been apparently their thing. She shows him her feet.
No, I think they were both
in exchange for information.
Yeah, but they were both getting something on.
I don't think so.
Mutual. Yeah, she was doing something there.
I think you might be misinterpreting.
Nope,
that.
she was.
You'll have to go back and rewatch that because it's definitely. I don't think she enjoyed that.
There's some mutual stuff going on there, man. Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't think there was.
Anyway,
we will leave that up to the watchers. But yeah, we have this super cool scene where Alicent goes to talk to Rhaenys, who was in King's Landing, and she's like, hey, please support Aegon. And Rhaenys is like, you think that, like, you're, like, doing good by being the power behind the throne, but you're not really doing anything. And she has this good line about how what she thinks she's doing is just a window in her prison, obviously because Rhaenys was passed up to be queen because she's a woman and Viserys was a man. And even though technically, like, going by, like, the laws and everything...
Queen that never was.
Yeah, the queen that never was. She had the better claim because she's the daughter of the previous king's oldest son, and Viserys was the son of his second son. So, technically, Rhaenys has the better claim, but she was passed over, obviously, because she's a woman. And
Viserys got that big old penis there.
Yeah, he's got the schlonger. And yeah, they have a good scene, and then essentially, Rhaenys is confined to her little apartment, or room, I guess, before she's busted out by Sir Eric, not Sir Eric. There are twins that are named Eric and Eric. You can tell they're different. One has an E and one has an A. Eric and Aric. But Eric with an E rescues Rhaenys, and as they're trying to get away, they are accidentally brought to the coronation of Aegon, and this is a super badass scene. Even though Aegon and, like, his side are all, like, assholes, and they're literally usurping the previous heir and all that stuff. Man, this scene was just cool. Like, Aegon enters, and, like,
super drip.
He's dripped out. Like, he walks underneath the swords. Like, all the city guards, they, like, hold their swords up, and he walks in.
Professional.
Yeah, super good.
And you can kind of see how it's meant to, like, protect the king from the crowd, but at the same time, it's, like, just looks super cool.
Yeah. So they do that, and then he's crowned. He gets a super drippy, it's Aegon the Conqueror's crown. It's made of Valyrian steel. And then he has
the crowd is just feeling the vibe, and they're like, yeah, king,
yeah, he's got the schlong. We hate women. We hate women.
That's what the common folk need.
Yeah, and then unfortunately, a bunch of the common folk are yeeted by Princess Rhaenys, who rides her dragon through the floor, doesn't kill everyone like that was just coronated and flies off, ending episode 9.
Yeah, the only thing sketch there is yeah, she just kills a bunch of random innocent people, but then it's like, yeah.
Yeah, and then she just yeets on out, and then it was pointed out to me that when she leaves, she actually squishes some more innocent peasants.
Nice.
Yeah, but murdering...
Yeah, who really cares about him anyway?
Murdering her, like, cousins and stuff, like, that's the line, that she won't cross that, but she'll murder people that she's not related to.
Yeah, family, bro.
Family, bro. But yeah, that's how the episode ends. And that was a very big sticking point that I talked with a bunch of people about how, why didn't she just, like, roast them all alive? Like,
yeah, and I thought that it was going to be, I thought it would be Rhaenyra on the dragon, but then it's the other one.
Yeah, Rhaenys.
Yes.
Yeah, super easy fix for that. Just have her dig through the ground outside of where they're doing that, and then she can just leave. But no,
doesn't it make more sense for it to be Rhaenyra in that scene? Because she's showing up to be like, "Hey, yo, what the fuck? Like, I'm queen around here, bitch."
Rhaenyra had already left King's Landing.
True, but I'm just saying.
True.
And I think they wanted you to think that it was Rhaenyra at first, like just for like 2 seconds, and then it's revealed to be Rhaenys or Rhaenys.
I don't think they planned for it or wanted people to believe it was Rhaenyra, because Rhaenyra had left, and you have a scene of Rhaenys like sneaking into the underbelly. That's
just my own personal bias.
Own personal bias. You just wanted it to be Rhaenyra so bad, bro.
Art isn't subjective. It's the same for everyone.
It's like poetry. It rhymes.
Your mom rhymes.
Oh no. But yeah, then we come to episode 10, the season finale, and essentially Rhaenys announces to Rhaenyra that
Fin de saison.
Fin de saison. Si.
Continuons.
And we have Princess Rhaenys shows up, and she's like, "Hey Rhaenyra, your dad's dead, and your half brother usurped you. I'm gonna leave now. Goodbye." And this makes Rhaenyra go into premature labor, and then we have our third birthing scene of the season, and Rhaenyra plops out a stillborn child, which was, that was rough.
Did it get strangled on its own umbilical cord?
That's what my girlfriend said. I don't know anything about birth. I just assumed that since it was so premature that it just died from that, but
it looked like it got like strangled on its umbilical cord a bit.
Oh. That could be. I have no clue. I'm not a doctor.
I guess Rhaenyra kind of knew because she was like refusing help.
Yeah. But yeah.
And
then we have Daemon, who just
modern medicine. Gotta love it.
Who ignores his wife giving birth to their third child, and he's already making plans for war because he's a man. He's a macho man. He's a macho man. I want to kill. Kill. Ride my dragon. Burn people to death. Slice with the sword. Slice.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah. I don't know. I do like their super fancy
light up table.
Yeah, the light up table. It's so cool.
Yeah. No, it is super cool. Very interesting that it's light up and not colored, because that table is called the painted table. But no big deal. But it looks cool.
Lava,
I don't care. Lava, bro.
Lava cool, bro.
Lava cool. But yeah, and then essentially after that they have their they have the funeral for the stillborn child, and Sir Eric brings Rhaenyra Viserys' crown, and it looks super dope on her. She's dripped out. The crown looks cool. And then she's declared queen by everyone there. And then we have Otto. He shows up. He's Hand of the King, and he's like, "Hey, Rhaenyra, how about this? You don't get to be queen, but you can keep Dragonstone, and we're essentially going to take your kids hostage by having them be..."
Shows up on the dragon.
And then Rhaenyra shows up on the dragon. She's like, "Nah, bro. I'll give you guys my answer tomorrow."
Yeah, talk to the dragon.
Yeah. Then we have Sea Snake, Lord Corlys. He finally shows back up, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to help you guys out, but we're gonna need more men." And Rhaenyra's like, "Okay, yeah. How about we go?"
Yeah, because at this point in the story, basically they haven't like formally kind of declared war yet, but they're all like the two sides are just trying to. Yeah, but they're just trying to like test the waters and gather like allies, see who's gonna stick with them. And Lord Corlys basically declares for the queen in this episode, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, because he has the strongest navy in the kingdom, so he can kind of blockade stuff off. Plus,
Not sure what happened to him in like 200 years. Do they have anything to do with the is their Driftwood crown the same, or Driftwood throne the same as the Driftwood throne from later, with the
Ironborn? No,
they're totally different.
Yeah.
Okay, don't they have like similar sounding last names?
No. That's the Valarians and Greyjoys.
Oh, the Greyjoys. That's okay. That doesn't sound similar at all.
No,
never mind.
But anyways, yeah, and then they're like, all right, well, we're going to have to essentially get some more allies, so how about we go do that? And Jacaerys and Lucerys, Rhaenyra's two eldest sons, they're like, okay, we'll
they
go
very
do that.
stupidly volunteer to deliver messages like they're pigeons, like they're carrier pigeons.
Well, they make a good point of saying, it's very, it makes sense for us to go, we're your eldest sons, plus we have dragons, which are, very convincing, is I think the line.
Yeah, but they did forget that the other side has dragons as well.
Yeah, but I don't think they were quite planning
Pretty stupid, bro.
I don't think they were planning on that. I don't think they were planning on that.
Not very smart.
They definitely weren't planning on that to happen yet.
Well, yeah.
Well, yeah.
They didn't think, like, what if the other people fly around with dragons to the kingdoms and stuff?
Well, they
dragon fight.
Yeah, that's fine. Anyway, so Jacaerys is going to go north to the Vale and to Winterfell, and hopefully get the Arryns and Starks on side. And then Lucerys is going to go to Storm's End and get the Baratheons on side. They go do that, and then Lucerys gets to Storm's End, and oh shit, Vhagar's there looking like a giant frickin' kaiju, bro. And then Lucerys,
very scary looking.
Yeah, very very cool shot of him showing up because his dragon is like tiny. I mean, it's bigger than like a human, but like compared to Vhagar, it's like tiny. Which obviously we see later. And yeah, he goes in and he's like, "Oh hey, Lord Baratheon, my mom wants you on her side," and he's like, "No, I'm not gonna do that because Aemond promised to marry one of my daughters, so who are you going to marry?" And he's like, "No, I can't. I'm already betrothed to be married, so I can't do anything." And Lord Boros is a dickhead to him. He's kind of rude, and then Aemond gets kind of spazzy about his eye. He's like, "I want my eye back." Or, I want
and then he rips off his eye patch, and it's like...
He's got a sapphire
Why is his eye... Oh, that's what that was?
Yeah. He puts a sapphire in it. For the
I thought
drip.
He kind of looked like
like an eye.
No, he looked like a like an other.
Oh no!
Like a White Walker.
Yeah. No, he just does it because.
Like, why does his eye look like that? Because of magic?
Nah, he just puts a gem in it, bro.
Yeah, pretty drip.
Yeah, very drippy, very cool. I mean, if I had lost an eye, I guess I would put some gems in it or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy. But yeah, and then from there, Lucerys is like, "All right, I'm totally gonna make it home, and nothing bad is ever gonna happen."
Yeah, the Lord guy makes a point of like letting what's his name go alone and leave, but then I guess he just lets Aemond leave right after too, and forgets that the dude has a giant ass dragon.
Well, I don't think it's that he cared, but essentially he's like, "Hey, like I'm not gonna let you shed blood in my castle," and obviously, up in the sky is not in his castle.
Ooh.
So, got him on a technicality there.
I guess so.
And then we have a really cool dragon chase scene, where I think this is really finally where it shows how big Vhagar is. Because she is big. Vhagar is she's a big old lady.
Yeah, there's like a chase sequence, and then of course it ends when Vhagar takes a big chomp out of the dragon. Big
old chomp out of Arrax and Lucerys, and we have tiny little dragon parts flying down into the ocean.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Aemon just looks kind of surprised like that even happened, and he's like, "Oh shit,
it's just a prank, bro." Yeah, then after this, Daemon informs Rhaenyra that Lucerys got yulked, and She's mad, she turns and faces the camera, and then it cuts to black, and then that is season
Like,
1 of House of the Dragon.
She says it's on like Donkey Kong.
And yeah, that brings
Dragon War, baby.
Dragon War, baby. Only about a year and a half, and we'll get Dragon War, baby.
No shitty Game of Thrones ever again.
True. But yeah.
House of the Dragon made its reign last 1,000 years.
True.
Or something.
I am very excited to see where it goes from here. I obviously have read Fire and Blood, so I know where it goes from here. But I believe it was confirmed that after they finish up with the Dance of the Dragons, they're going to continue using the House of the Dragon name, and they'll use that to do other events from the Targaryen history. So that opens up a lot of stuff. You can have Aegon's
They could
Conquest.
do it from any era in their history.
Well, of the Targaryens.
No, yeah, but that's pretty much the entire history of Westeros then.
Well, not really. There's a lot of stuff way before that.
Fine.
But yeah,
Just all the cool stuff. Man.
Yeah, super good show, and can't wait to see where it goes. I believe I read a thing. Someone from HBO said 2024. Don't expect to see it in 2023. So sad.
Cringe.
I remember when they made shows once a year.
Cringe.
Very cringe. But obviously, you've already heard our thoughts on everything and a spoiler-free section, so we will see you next time in the Lore Council. This has been Cade, and we are signing off.
Yeah, later.